Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees. And Ms. Harden, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Mayor Andrew Muckle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lisa Skumatz.
Here.
Trustees Joe Sorelli, Dana D'Souza, Maria Gregoris, Eric Rosenfeld,
Present.
Deborah Williams,
Here.
Town Manager Scott Randall,
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry,
Here.
Town Principal Sergeant Here.
Thank you very much. With that, let's move to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? I'd like to request to move item 6D to follow the consent agenda, just to ask some questions about it. Any other changes? D, yeah, about the sidewalk.
I do have some comments on the minutes. The minutes.
Do you have edits?
I do, I guess. Some things
Yeah.
were left out.
Right, so if it's, in general, if they're kind of typo or they don't affect meaning, then we try to do that offline, but it sounds like there's actual
Some content left out.
content left. Okay? So we'll have that to follow.
Which set of meetings?
A?
A.
Okay?
A. Right.
Okay. Seeing no other changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Rosenfeld. Discussion, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. With that, we're at item number 4, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. Welcome, George.
Good evening, Board. George Kuffner, 109 South Fourth. I have a question. We had a board member recommend that we have more public hearings on the roundabout. Has this taken place? We had more citizens' participation in the roundabout. Has this taken place?
There haven't been any additional meetings, if that's what you're asking.
Well, I'm asking because we had a board member suggest that we do have open meetings and public input on this roundabout, and I have heard nothing about attending.
I think a board member here might be able to speak to that.
And I think I had mentioned it at a previous meeting, and I do feel like we want more input, or I want more input, and I assumed that might happen as part of tonight's agenda item.
I appreciate it. And there's been no decisions on this whatsoever yet.
Not yet.
Correct. Secondly, something for the Public Works Department. We got a case that needs to be put some asphalt or concrete in up here coming out of Wendy's on Marshall Road. There's a concrete's busted out there, and it's been that way for quite some time now. I thought I'd recommend that just get taken care of immediately because it's getting to the point where it could be hazardous, throwing out car alignment and so forth. That's about, I want to know when we're going to paint the lines over here on, put the stripes down, not the paint, but stripes on Marshall Road over here. Here it is June, nothing been said about repainting the crosswalks. We were putting the stripes down, and I think there's several of them that needs taken care of.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Additional public comments? Welcome.
George Kuffner of 7520 West Coal Creek Drive. A month ago, I brought it to our attention about some asphalt repairs that needed to be warranted. It's been a month and I have seen no action on them. I'd like to add another one to it. It's up here at 4th Charles, I believe it's right there at the corner where there's a couple of pipes sticking out of the ground about 1.5 inches, water valve tops. I'd like to know what the schedule is, what it's going to be, not just me get up here and ask you about it and then a month later nothing's been done. And I want to know if it's on our dime or their dime that we're going to get these fixed from our town manager of Public Works Department. And then again on West Coal Creek here, if you guys drive up there, you'll see that we've got some pavement that's sinking from, I would say, lack of preparation before pavement that we need to get fixed. And I don't know if that's run long enough that now it's out of warranty and we've got to pay for it. Because at one time I talked to somebody at RNG and they told me that they thought they were going to try to make the contractor rotomill that and put a brand new surface all the way up through there. But even if we do that, we need to fix the problems we have with it before we do that. But if you walk up, if you drive up it now, you'll see some pretty good pavement. It's going to be damaged. It's a sinkhole that's coming that we need to get fixed. And I'd like to get some kind of response from either the town manager or Public Works Department of a schedule of when we're going to get done and whose dime is doing it.
Okay.
Because I don't feel that it should be our dime as far as taxpayers of the town doing it. The contractors that have done that need to come back in town and fix it on their dime, as I did.
Okay.
So maybe before the next meeting, somebody can contact me with a written letter telling me when they're going to be fixed or whatever, please.
Why don't you, can you send me a note? This is on my radar screen, but I don't want to forget it. So if you wouldn't mind, if you can send me a note, that would be fantastic.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody send you a note?
Anybody can send me a note anytime, and I'm in the book, and you can phone me at the house, so it's all good. Trustee Skumatz.
And is this an appropriate time to say one of the things that the board, I believe the board is working on, is figuring out the best way to make sure we loop back on questions so that, I know I brought this up before, but make sure we loop back on questions so that not only the person who asked the question knows that there was a loop back, but also so that it's known that it's not left there hanging, so, thanks.
Yes, I think the town manager has been working on a communication plan, and I think that might be part of it, so. Additional public comment? Okay. Seeing none, item number 5, presentations, which is the award for the naming the Superior Sentinel newsletter. Mr. Randall, do you want to give us a little history about this?
One of the board's communication goals this year was to rename the monthly town newsletter. There was a lengthy process where we had 40-some local residents submit nominations for names as well as the basis for the name that they were recommending. Those were published in a subsequent issue of the newsletter. There was a community vote. People were asked to submit their preferences. The top, I believe it was 4 names, were then submitted to the town board for a selection, and the board selected the Superior Sentinel. This was done about a month ago. Tonight's agenda item is to thank and to recognize and award the individual member of our community that submitted that suggestion. And Mr. Williams is in the audience tonight with his young son. And
Outstanding.
I think the mayor has a certificate and an award.
Great.
And thanks.
So, before I get to that, I'd like to thank everybody who turned in suggestions. It's always nice. You know, I think there were many. The board couldn't even agree on the title, but it speaks highly to the interest that the residents have in the community, and so I appreciate that. But with that, I'd like to thank Mr. Weston Williams for submitting the name of the new title for the Superior newsletter, which will be the Superior Sentinel. And with that, I'd like to offer a certificate and a gift certificate. Thank you. So who should I give it? I'll give it to the boss.
Sure, that's fine.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Sure, thank you. Oh, okay, all right.
We'll do that picture. All right, great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for coming out. What's that? Yeah. All right, great. Let's see. Now we're on to the consent agenda, and remaining on the consent agenda is the acceptance of the minutes of the Open Space Advisory Committee and the Parks Recreation, Open Space and Trails Advisory Committee meetings, approval of liquor license renewal for Old Chicago Restaurant, and adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Standard Renewable Energy for the installation of solar panels. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Williams, thank you. Further comment about the consent agenda? Seeing none? Phyllis?
Okay, Rosenfeld,
Yes.
Skumatz,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Buckle,
Yes. So, thank you very much. With
Glad to
that,
see us moving forward on solar.
it's outstanding to see us moving forward in solar, and there's more good things to come. So, looking forward to having the town become energy self-sufficient. So, now we're at what was 6A, approval of the minutes of May 11th and May 26th, 2009 meetings. Trustee Skumatz.
Yes. And it may not be large enough, I don't know if it raises to the level of large enough or not, but But the two elements that I saw missing in the minutes, particularly of May 26th, were my concern about that when we save money on the transportation, the road construction stuff, that we look not only at road construction elements to spend the money on, but look at what are our highest priorities in town. And that point didn't make it in, and that was really important to me. It was kind of the central element of what I was trying to say in that one part. And then we had a very long discussion toward the end when we were talking about the RFPs for the snowplow and all of that, about there being a 30-day time limit and all that sort of stuff, and none of the 30-day stuff made it into the minutes.
Okay.
Excellent.
So have that revised and come back at the next meeting?
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion then to approve the, the other meetings. Trustee
The
Skumatz.
May 11th?
Yes, May 11th. So I would like to move that we adopt the minutes from the meeting of May 11th.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Williams. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. Item number 6D, adoption of a resolution approving the agreement with North Star Concrete for the Town 9 Sidewalk Trail. Mr. Randall, could you give us a little bit of history?
Yes. Board will recall that the original plan for the Town 9 included a soft, local vernacular, crusher fine pathway system around the park. After the installation was completed, it came to our attention that there were many within the community that were looking at the perimeter of the park, not so much as a part of the park, but as a way to get back and forth across town, from original town into the Superior Marketplace, from Sagamore to the east and the like, and that they missed the hard surface pavement that had been replaced as part of the soft surface. So at the board's direction last fall, they asked that we come up with some design alternatives for either an asphalt or a concrete pathway without sacrificing the soft surface pathway system. The proposal before you tonight calls for a varying width, 5 foot to 6 foot width concrete sidewalk around all four sides of the perimeter of the park, maintaining at least a 3-foot crusher fine path inside the hard surfaced pavement. It also has another improvement, which is the finishing of curb and gutter on the west side of 4th Avenue between Coal Creek and Sycamore. The total cost of this improvement, we're recommending the second highest bidder because of some performance issues we had with the lowest bidder. We're recommending the second bidder at $114,625. This is the last capital improvement element of your $2.9 million pavement and resurfacing budget. And I think the board report includes you've approved various contracts so far, brings the total expenditure for the year about just under $1.8 million, again, when we had a $2.9 million budget.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. So with the curb and gutter on 4th Street, I forgot to drive out there, but I think that that's the width and the alignment there is aligned with the relatively newly constructed Coal Creek Drive.
Yes, it is.
If I understand that. I guess where I'm getting is I'm trying to minimize the amount of throwaway costs that we might have if and when the additional amount of Coal Creek Drive might be changed in alignment or whatever, so it all lines up at one time.
The possibility of straightening, if you will, Coal Creek all happens further to the west. This is not within that zone of influence. The east side of 4th Avenue at this location is already curbed and guttered.
Okay.
We've never had it adjacent to the town-owned park. We thought if we're going to be going in there and doing some work, this was the appropriate time at which to bite the bullet and do it. The other alternative would be to wait for a development to take place within the area and ask a third party to pay for it, but never knowing if and when that might happen, we thought this was the most expedient way to go about it.
And if and when the rest of Coal Creek Drive was realigned so it was completely straight, my understanding is that there wouldn't be any throwaway cross with the hard surface.
None.
Because it would be moved farther away from the path.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I know that there's a drainage, it's not really a channel, but on the north side of the property, and I wasn't sure how the sidewalk was going to cross over that, or does it? Or is it inside that the entire way? Is anybody able to answer that? John?
Mr. Mayor, trustees of the board, John Hawkins, Director of Public Works. If you're referring to the drainage channel that goes parallel with Coal Creek Drive along the north side of it, right,
Yes,
that
that's
will
the
be
second one.
unaffected by this trail. This trail will be completely within the park
Within the-
boundaries,
okay.
separate from it.
Okay, that was it. Trustee Skumatz?
So I'm sure, I'd like to thank you for the design element that I'm sure trustee Sorelli is very excited about, which is the making a soft path so for joggers and things all the way around. That was something I know that was a high priority for him and many others within town. You mentioned that this is the last capital improvement on Town 9, and I know so I know I've gotten a lot of
My apologies.
comments. Okay.
It's the last of our anticipated capital improvement items for which we budgeted $2.9 million for street resurfacing. You've had the street resurfacing north of Colton, the street resurfacing south of Colton, the engineering. This was the last component
Thank you.
For 2009.
for 2009. Nothing about the rest of the park improvements.
Okay, and I frequently get asked about where is the park and where are we headed with it, and I just wondered whether someone could give a very high-level overview of what is yet to happen at that park. Approved maybe, and that sort of thing.
Nothing else has been approved other than what you've seen out there. The boards, the current year budget called for the irrigation and the finished sodding, or not sodding, but seeding of the park. Last year, the installation of both the restroom facility and the park facility. And as you know, we've given ProStack the responsibility to come up with annualized work programs utilizing the Conservation Trust Fund dollars that the town receives. They've already come up with the 09 plan, and it is anticipated the long-term budget calls for additional improvements or amenities to be added at Town 9 based on the priorities that are recommended to you by ProStack. But there's nothing else proposed in the near future for Town 9.
Okay.
There might be somebody in the audience that could also speak to this, and if there is, I'd entertain that person to come forward.
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle. I chair the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, ProStack. The only, is absolutely my understanding, there is an item currently in the budget, it's a few years out, for a pavilion within Town 9 Park. But other than that, its current stage is as a neighborhood park, green grass, it's been seeded, trees have been added, and other than the normal process of adding trees and vegetation, as we do with all parks, that's the current plan. But we are looking at other amenities that would fit in that scheme.
Thank you.
That's it.
So I hope that answers the questions that I get.
Did you guys look at this proposed plan?
Yes.
I didn't see that in the report, so I thought it was worth commenting on.
Yes, the board had asked ProStack to look at it when public comment came up about the need, and we did, and looked at it very carefully, and this proposal meets all of our recommendations and meets every public concern that was raised. And the only thing I would add to John Hawkes's cover memo in support of it is that it's not, one reason was to have a hard surface because residents wanted for wheelchairs, for grocery carts, for tricycles and carriages, a hard surface. But there's also a lot of concern about having a plowable walkway around the perimeter so that it would be open year-round. So that was not in the part of the rationale in the memo, but that was an important consideration. But we did look at it. We think it's great.
Thank you. Great, thanks. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm sure that this is all ADA accessible and all the curbs and ramps, so I know that that will be the case. So. Just no Yeah, I just want to make sure. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah.
Trustee Williams?
I just wanted to just make a note in this improvement plan. I see a road in there. That wasn't a planned road, correct?
That was a road that was proposed by a third-party developer when they were interested in annexing and developing the Oxner property. We wanted to make sure that if that development plan ever resurfaced, you could see how it would align and how it would impact on this. But no, that road is not being proposed at this point. If something were to happen at a future date, wanting to show you the level of the zone of influence that would be affected by any other construction.
So really, it shouldn't even be there, correct? I mean, it shouldn't be in this schematic.
But I think those curb cuts on the north side on Sycamore do exist. So from that standpoint, it's just to show what it was meant for. The curb cuts are there.
Yes.
Okay.
But right now, there's no plan to split the
park.
Okay.
Other questions from the board? Questions or comments? George?
Yeah, George Custer. When we abandoned our baseball park over here to put another park in over here, we were supposed to have another ballpark for the original town in the Town 9, not just an open field. When are we going to get down to nitty-gritty and put a park in, a baseball park for 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids? You got a park up there that they bring their dogs and run their Frisbees, and all sorts of things going on in Flatgrass Park. Trees I'll never see for a shade tree. You took the park away over here, and that was one of the understandings. When you took it, we were going to have one up above. Why can't we enforce that and do that? And when is it in the planning is this going to happen? Am I going to be able to see it in my lifetime or not?
So this is where we're at. So for people that are where the Esty Park is right now, used to be a ball field, although it wasn't really
That's correct, and we come in and complain about the weeds and ask for grass
Exactly.
and this and that, and we reject it, and then somebody asked for a dog park, and we said, well,
Right.
we'll just move it to the Town 9 up there, and I don't see one.
Right, so just as a little background about where we're talking about. And so the Town 9 has a backstop there, although it's not very good. And so this would be a good community dialogue, because there's been people that, your neighbors, who have said, we don't really want any programmed activities out there. We want it as minimal use as possible. And then I understand your viewpoint would have to have a playing field. So, I don't think that within the community has been solved. And currently where we're at is that it's just...
over here, we had a backstop, permanent backstop, nothing
Correct.
like the wind could...
All I'm saying is that...
You know what I'm talking about, Mayor. And I
I-
just disgusted that we don't follow through with what we promised people.
Well, once again, I want to be clear that we didn't say that we're going to put in a regulation ball field. It was, and I'm not sure that the community has
We sit
supported
and
that.
had
so-
meeting after meeting, and we planned that park right down in this town hall. Different people got into groups, and this is what they recommended, and that's why this park disappeared. It was supposed to be up there, and it ain't there yet.
Okay, so once again, ProStack will be looking at this, but
Well, I'd like to talk to them, because it's getting old.
I suspect that can be arranged. Trustee Skumas.
And the way I interpreted what I heard in all the meetings was, I heard definitely that people wanted to be able to use it as a ball field, and that other people wanted it to be quite open. I heard very loudly that people didn't want it programmed and didn't want, lots of leagues and things like that to be using that field on that time, for lots of time, but rather it was meant to be more a neighborhood park. What I left with was that people would have bases, and they'd put out bases when they wanted the 10, 11, 12-year-olds to be playing, the neighborhood kids to be playing, and they'd throw out the bases and they'd play baseball. It was plenty big enough. You could do a regulation field. That's the way I interpreted what was happening, so that it would be flexibly either a baseball field or a football field or whatever it is that the neighborhood kids wanted to play on at that time. So I did not expect to see diamonds and sand and lines and all the rest of that. So that's an interesting takeaway that you took. I took a completely different one. I took a flexible approach away.
Lisa, go over to Northborough Park and see what takes place in Transpire over there. They have football over there, and they have baseball diamonds over there, and they have playground equipment. I'd be glad to take a picture for you if you can't drive by there and look at it. Northborough Park, right off of Delwood up there. We might not be able to have the biggest park as they have there, because they have the open space there a long time ago. But we still can have a minor baseball field and a bases put in there for kids and a backstop put in there. Go look at that over there, will you, please? It makes us ashamed of ourselves, really. I'm a baseball enthusiast.
As am I.
You got parks up there, let's have some parks down here.
I appreciate your feedback, and I'm just trying to say that other residents felt like they wanted to be more flexible, so, thanks.
It would be a good community discussion, and I spent a lot of time watching youth baseball, having somebody in the family playing youth baseball, so, I'm all about building more fields, but I'm not sure that that's been the community decision yet, so. Additional public comment about this issue? Entertain a motion from the mayor to approve Resolution R-36, Series 2009, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a contract with the North Star Concrete for the Town 9 trail improvements. Second by Trustee Skumatz. Further discussion. Trustee Williams?
Just going for the second.
Okay, exactly. Phyllis?
Williams?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Rosenfeld?
Yes.
Buckle?
Yes. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 7, reports, questions, and issues. Trustee Rosenfeld, would you like to start?
I don't have anything.
Trustee Skumatz?
I think the only things since the last board meeting were the Boulder County Resource Conservation Advisory Board had a meeting and presented the first of a zero-waste plan that they're putting together that they hope that elements of will be adopted by communities around the county, and I think it's going to go through a subcommittee process and then come out again. We had a coffee buzz, I think last Saturday, and it was lively.
A week from last year.
Thanks, okay. And tomorrow, I just found out today that I have my first library board meeting in Louisville tomorrow.
Great.
It was, I don't know how come I just found out today, but in any case, I was able to ditch the other thing I was supposed to do, and I can go. And I think it's more, what do we want to do? What are our priorities? So I think that will be an interesting meeting.
Great. Did you receive any background information from them?
Nothing
So
yet.
it's just a discussion. Okay. I remember having a conversation with our colleagues at Louisville that there were to be materials forwarded to our library board members, and thank you for serving on that the town in general should have copies of it as well. Okay. Let's see, I missed the Rocky Flats meeting. There wasn't anything in particular new. Appreciate the assistant town manager for attending those meetings as well. The remediation processes in place seem to be working appropriately, and it's kind of where we're at right now. And then I attended a US 36 Mayors and Commissioners meeting about the US 36 Environmental Impact Statement, and the mayors and commissioners along the corridor are interested in applying for a TIGER grant, I believe is what the acronym right now, which is the $1.5 billion discretionary pot for transportation projects. I think that we're not real likely to obtain monies from it, at least nothing significant, but we'll be applying for it. The town manager, I think, has received information from Mr. Wolforth about there might be some dollar figures associated with the modeling associated with the application process, and as well as some outside consultant work that might be needed. And I think the dollar figure that we're talking for Superior, since this is shared along the corridor, is probably in the $2,000 range, so I don't think it'd be too much. And as people said during the meeting, it's sort of that you have to pay to play, unfortunately, that you need to keep in front of our federal legislators and the rest of the Congress. And so it's, if we don't apply for this, then the thought is that, well, we're not really interested in the corridor, so that's kind of where we're at. So hopefully we'll get a big chunk of change. Hopefully we'll have transportation improvements. A little skeptical about that being the case. Trustee Williams.
Unfortunately, I have nothing to report at the moment.
Okay. Mr. Randall.
Briefly, since we missed it at the workshop session, heads up in terms of the items that are on your schedule for your next agenda. There are at least at this juncture, 3 additional action items. The first is the intergovernmental agreement with Boulder County regarding hazardous materials. This is a continuation of our existing agreement. It covers capital and operating costs associated with the multi-jurisdictional facility which has recently been built in Boulder. The proposed agreement before you would extend our existing agreement, which is set to expire later this year through 2014. We will be providing the board with a list of the existing advisory committee and commission appointments that need to be made beginning in the month of July. We'll give you the list of whose terms are up I would ask if there's any guidance regarding the process that you'd like to consider, if there are individuals that are interested and willing to continue to serve in their current capacity, or whether you wanted to go through some sort of a solicitation process. But I'll get you the list first. I'd asked Phyllis today to start preparing it, so you should have it in your hands before the end of this week. We anticipate bringing, depending on your action on the last agenda item tonight, an amended intergovernmental agreement with Boulder County regarding the costs associated with the Colton-McCaslin intersection improvements. You recall that the intergovernmental that we've already entered into said that Boulder County would be responsible for up to $400,000 in capital construction costs. The contract before you tonight is slightly above that amount, and we still have lighting to be contracted through Excel. Boulder County has agreed to pay all of those expenses, but we'll need to formally amend the existing agreement beyond the current cap of $400,000. We also anticipated that we would have the 2 solar farms on your next agenda. However, I don't anticipate that that'll be coming forward that quickly. We just learned last week, as a result of a meeting with Excel, that the Public Utilities Commission has increased the eligibility for what we would define as medium-sized solar installations. Right now, solar installations are limited for Excel rebates up to 100 kilowatt generating capacity. The rules have been amended. The amended rules are effective September 1, but at that point in time, they will be rebating up to 500 kilowatt installations. So we think that it would be astute to go ahead and look at a larger installation for the 2 ground-mounted installations, one at our water treatment plant, one at our wastewater treatment plant. So we're coming back with modified plans for you to take a look at, because there'll be more land devoted to the use, but we'll get to a point where we will be able to generate substantially greater amounts and eligible for rebates now that the PUC rules have been amended. So it's going to take us a few more weeks to come back with the next generation of solar installations, but we're excited about the possibility of being even that much more energy efficient than what we talked about when you saw the plan about a month or so. A couple of items from the digest. You have received under separate cover the mayor's, my assistant's, and my report on our activities at ICSC. Hopefully, if there's any comment and question about it, but I thought it was a very successful trip where we had 38 different contacts with retention visits and new commercial enterprises that have expressed some interest and possibility of coming into Superior.
Mr. Randall, for those that aren't familiar with the terminology, can you tell us what that was
The
about?
International Council of Shopping Centers. It's probably our biggest foray as a town in economic development recruitment. This year's conference was attended by more than 30,000 attendees. It was 2.5 days in Las Vegas in the 3rd week in May. We had 3 representatives, again, Mayor Muckle, Mr. Magley, and myself. At that time, we met with 38 different prospects. Again, some of them are existing businesses doing business within the town. Others are those that might have interest in either filling an existing vacant space or a new development within the community. And again, we've shared that report with the board, as we always have, showing you the types of contacts and the types of follow-up that need to be done. We've given you follow-up information from your last board meeting, some of the more significant ones. The board had asked for a design alternative for the monument sign to be installed in front of Town Hall. The vendor had completed that. We've shared with you the graphic, and the most significant is the board's changes are going to be accomplished at no additional cost.
Mr. Randall, so I didn't see the graphic. Can you just describe what that was?
The narrative on the sign says Town of Superior Town Hall. That was in the original plan. That was going to be at the top of the sign with the electronic reader or message board at the bottom. The electronic message board has been moved up to the top of the sign. Town of Superior will be above it. Town Hall will be below it. Exactly what you asked for, and again, no additional cost.
Thanks.
My apologies. I thought it was attached to one of the digests. Might have been on the hard copy and may not have been incorporated on the electronic. Sycamore drainage. RG has been tasked with that, and the process has begun. We expect that you'll have design alternatives for those drainage improvements no later than the time that the board begins to review its 2010 budget, which will be in the 1st of September. Following up on Trustee Skumatz's conversations about the Library Committee, the Louisville Superior Interchange Committee, is scheduled to meet next Monday, our first meeting. There's going to be a pre-meeting with the Superior representatives, so we're all on the same page of what we're looking for and what the motivations are. So we'll be meeting earlier that morning.
Mr. Randall, before you move on, so why don't you, in case anybody is curious about what the town of Superior's interest is in the interchange?
the town and the city of Louisville have had an intergovernmental agreement that dates back more than a decade. I believe it's circa about 1995. And included in that agreement was a cost allocation and a design preference for Phase 2 improvements for the interchange. The preferred design alternative calls for a cloverleaf or a loop as a way to access from northbound McCaslin onto westbound US 36. Right now, you have to make a left-hand turn across 3 lanes of traffic to get onto westbound 36. Our long-standing preference has been that that be a loop design, like we have at the southwest quadrant. That design has not been included within the draft environmental impact study for US 36. It's not included in the final environmental impact study, though the 2 communities have long been on record that that was our preferred design, and there's a method to allocate or to assign the costs to see that we get that improvement done. The purpose of this interchange committee is to continue to push forward with that agenda, and it was one of the things that the 2 boards discussed at length when the boards met collectively back in late April. Okay. I think the last item I had was some information on water sales. So we've received the updated information from Mr. Zilas. We know about the snow melt for the year. We know about our water shares. So
Mr. Zilas
is our water attorney. That we have approved, the sale of some surplus water to the Horizons apartment complex so that they could raise the level of the water on Autry Reservoir. And we're in the process of entering into an agricultural lease, which we've done many years. Collectively, that's going to generate in excess of $27,000 of additional revenue, unbudgeted revenue for the town. But again, because of our surplus shares and the very good reservoir capacity that we've attained this year, we're confident that we're in a position that we can sell some of our surplus water. And then last, we've given you the information about the budget calendar. We're on the same target as you've had for the last couple of years, which means that the department heads are already preparing their anticipated budget requests for 2010. It is expected that the board will have my formal recommendation no later than August 1st, and then we will schedule Finance Committee and board review of that to begin immediately after Labor Day.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Carberry.
I just want to let all of you know I'm speaking at the CML conference on the Superior Louisville Revenue Sharing IGA, which I understand has never come into play yet, but both Sam Light and I are going to be discussing it and why it's a good agreement as opposed to some of the other examples that will be presented at that session. A couple are Denver and Aurora, Denver and Greenwood Village. There are some examples that are far more complicated and aren't probably going to work as well as ours, even though ours hasn't come into play yet. We think when it does come into play, it will work well. So I just wanted to invite you all, anybody who's going to CML, to come to that presentation.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Why do you think it'll work well?
I do think it will work well.
Why?
Oh, because it's very simple. I think part of the presentation is that it was well drafted. Kathy Haddock drafted it with Susan Griffiths of Louisville. And
So you're just talking about it from a legal...
Yes, from a legal standpoint. Yes, I'm not talking the policies. That's not
Okay.
the substance of our discussion. It's from a legal perspective, how to draft these things, if you're interested in doing revenue sharing in the first place. But if you are interested in doing revenue sharing, how these documents should be drafted and how they would be implemented. So, to contrast, Denver and Aurora's similar agreement was drafted in the 80s. It contemplated a very specific development. The development never happened, and it got into all sorts of legal battles because nobody knew what to do, because all the details for the development were actually included in the IGA. So it would have been if you all, back when you did this in 1997, had contemplated a specific development for one of these parcels, and then all of a sudden the development fails, and then where do you stand? So that's part of the issue.
Thank you for doing that. Ms. Harden.
No.
Okay. Trustee Skumatz, yes, one more.
I'm really sorry, I forgot one meeting, and that was the Consortium of Cities had its meeting the other night, and decided on its priorities for this next year, and I can remember 3 of the 4, and I apologize for that, being continuing its emphasis on energy, adding a component related to other environmental benefits or issues, particularly the need for infrastructure related to recycling and composting and such, and that's a county-wide issue as opposed to just a community issue. Investigating whether or not there are services that are offered by Boulder County or other communities or should be offered by more communities, and whether there's opportunities for shared services or that sort of thing. And then I know that there was interest in changing some of the agenda items so that there's more of a city or community focus, not just a Boulder County focus. But a couple of issues were raised that were really interesting, where people said, well, how does your agenda setting work, and how does your something or other work, and that sort of thing. And I think we're going to have more of those kinds of issues in the meeting so that we learn more about how some of the other communities in the area work. I'll bring back interesting tidbits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, let's move to item number 8, which is adoption of a resolution approving a contract with North Star Concrete, Inc. for the McCaslin Boulevard, Colton Road intersection roundabout project. Mr. Randall.
A little bit of history. The board entered into an intergovernmental agreement with Boulder County back in March of 2008 to fund these specific improvements. At that point, the intergovernmental agreement said that the town and the county would share the cost of designing an intersection improvement, and that Boulder County would pay up to $400,000 to construct that mutually approved design. Shortly thereafter, in June, the town went through a special solicitation and hired MB Consulting Engineers to be the project engineer for this design. That was approved by Boulder County as well. About 3 months later, in October of 2008, MB came forward with 2 design alternatives, one for a traditional intersection design controlled by traffic signals, the other was a roundabout design, and walked through the cost allocation, the cost impacts of both, as well as the benefits and disadvantages of either design. It was at that point in time that the board indicated its preference for moving forward with a roundabout instead of the traditional intersection. Those engineering plans matured throughout the winter months and came back to the board in late March, at which time the board said, yes, we are still in favor of the roundabout design. However, at that point in time, there was a request that there be additional community outreach. Specifically, the board asked that the Planning Commission have an opportunity to review and comment on it. That meeting was held in early April, at which time the planning commissioners, while they did not take a vote, showed strong preference for the inherent benefits associated with a roundabout design. There was also some additional information about the roundabout included in the April community newsletter in an effort to increase the community's awareness about the proposed improvement at that location. Engineering has been completed. We've gone ahead and through the bidding process. We had 7 bidders that responded to the solicitation, and before you tonight is a construction contract that has been modestly amended to include some additional optional construction features, where we're recommending it be awarded to the low bidder of North Star Concrete at a total cost of $426,349.50. The calendar for improvements anticipate that this work would begin in early July, be completed no later than the end of September, and while the road does not need to be closed at any point in time, there will be some lane interruptions, some detours, those kinds of things in the zone of, again, the zone of construction, but at no point should the intersection be closed. Background, what was the motivation? I'm sure the board members can speak to this. But this goes back to some of the board's long-standing goals. One of the board's goals in 2008 was to implement traffic calming improvements and tame traffic on McCaslin. And when I talk about inherent benefits associated with a roundabout, one of the most significant is that the roundabout design significantly slows traffic. It does effectively calm traffic on McCaslin. It is greener, and it is staff's opinion, engineers' opinion, traffic engineers' opinion that it is a safer design. It doesn't preclude accidents, but even when accidents do occur, they occur at different angles and at significantly lower speeds. So, without putting words in the mouth of individual board members, I think those were the motivations on why the board originally, last October, said, with the costs being relatively equal, we like the roundabout design. And that's why we've proceeded to the point where we are tonight to approve the construction contract. As I indicated, the construction is a little bit more expensive than what we thought. Boulder County has said throughout that they are prepared to pay for the cost of the improvements, and that's why we had hoped to have an intergovernmental agreement amendment on your agenda tonight. It didn't get done. It will be done within the next 2 weeks, and assuming that the contract is awarded, we'll be coming forward with an amendment that will say Boulder County still agrees to pay 100% of the cost, not capped at $400,000. Be glad to answer any questions.
You know, what I'd like to do, if it's possible, to warm up the camera and just go over the associated improvements at the area. Is that possible? just in case people that aren't here or haven't seen this are able to see what we're talking about. I have a...
You want the two graphics?
Yeah, either way, either the overhead or if it's electronic. I should have forewarned you, sorry about that, but...
I have it electronic. I'm sure they do.
Yeah, it's got to be there somewhere.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll have you run down and plug in your computer.
That's okay.
I tried it for a while, and I just can't work off the... I want to work off the computer, but I just can't get there.
Sorry. I love it. Do this on the computer. That's what my problem is.
Okay. Mr. Hawkins, thank you. Could you orient us and show us where we're at and what the associated improvements that we're not responsible for as well?
Certainly. This is oriented such that north is to the right. This would be McCaslin Boulevard with its intersection with Colton Road coming in from the bottom of the drawing here. On the top edge of this drawing is the Boulder County open space and the Colton Trail that goes to the west. What you're seeing in this graphic is a proposed trailhead that's also a partnership between the town of Superior and Boulder County open space that will be constructed primarily by Boulder County Parks and Open Space staff under a separate agreement to begin later this fall. This project is concerned primarily with the intersection here of McCaslin Boulevard and Colton Road. What you're seeing is a road that's going to be narrowed down from the north going south as it approaches this intersection. Medians as they approach the intersection actually on all four quadrants. The circular roundabout, it's a single lane roundabout, a little bit easier to navigate than our roundabout on Rock Creek Parkway and 88th. And it will create an equal entrance in all four legs of this intersection, creating a nicer entrance for this future trailhead. There will be lighting at 8 points around this intersection, focused primarily on the crosswalks. The crosswalks on each leg are set back slightly from the roundabout itself and have a safe zone at midway at the medians. The lanes in each approach are about 12 feet or slightly wider, and so any pedestrians or bicyclists crossing in these crosswalks only have a short distance to cross and only looking for traffic from one direction as they cross. McCaslin Boulevard is a popular bicycle route, and so the proper way for bicyclists to use a roundabout are to merge with traffic, and we expect a lot of the more aggressive bicyclists to do that. However, for those that are uncomfortable with that, this sidewalk you see on the side here, this actually is mimicked in all of the quadrants. This will be a ramp where they can essentially exit the vehicle lane and use the sidewalk to navigate around this. For instance, a southbound cyclist could enter onto the sidewalk and then use this crosswalk, come back around, and merge back onto the roadway in the bike lane itself. So those are some of the features. The medians will have some low plantings and taller overstory trees such that essentially from knee-high to above a person's head, it's fully open and visible, no obstructions for the pedestrian seeing traffic and vice versa. Sidewalks, all four quadrants of this intersection, because we know that when this trailhead is completed, it will be a regional draw. And then the central island of the roundabout will also be landscaped and with really just a single tree in the center with some landscape lighting, more for visibility to, not blocking visibility through the intersection, but for visibility to show that that center island is there. The circle is sized for full-size semi-tractor trailers and cars. Cars can go through at a maximum speed, or average speed really, of 18 to 20 miles an hour. We know a lot of people will drive slightly slower than that through these, which is what one of the goals was, to slow traffic, but at the same time, traffic will always be moving, rather than stopping at a red light when there's no other traffic. Larger trucks will most likely need to use this center apron. It's a large concrete apron that will allow those trailing wheels to drive up on that and continue around, because they do not track the same as just a car or the tractor portion of those vehicles. I think I touched on all the points, and I can answer any questions.
A few questions for me. So we had a discussion about how to do street signage since the masts aren't there. Has that been clarified how that's going to occur? Currently on the stoplights, there's,
Correct.
lit sign that, this is the road. So how does that occur in this design?
Well, this will not necessarily have that internally illuminated street sign yet. We're working out those details with Excel. Because of the style of lighting, they don't allow those on just a light pole. They are allowed on a signal pole. We can have them as separate ground mounts. For now, we're going to go with just metal sheet signing, showing the different directions and other signage around this intersection. We're working those details out, and we'll have to come up with an alternative design.
Delightful as always working with Excel.
Yes.
Then a couple performer questions here. So can a snowplow get through this?
Absolutely.
So you don't foresee any difficulties with that?
No, a snowplow can get through this. A full semi-tractor trailer can get through this. The fire department has reviewed it, and they're comfortable with the design. They did make some comments, such as some of the external curb being a more of a rollover style than a barrier style curb, in case they are rolling up on that, and that was easily accommodated and put into those final plans for bidding.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Questions from the board? Trustee Skumatz?
I'm going to probably have several rounds, but I'll...
Yeah.
So, on the street signs, is one of the options you're considering putting a sign on the road, on the side of the road that just says, like, Colt, whatever, rather than up high, but rather, the one where you're approaching it so you know in the roundabout that you go that way for Colt?
Correct. Similar to what's on 88th and Rock Creek Parkway at this point.
Rather than overhead, okay. I see where you've got the crosswalks for the citizens. I'm wondering whether a citizen will have a button they can activate, and whether it will be as bright and obnoxious as the ones, for instance, in Boulder and elsewhere with the big, bright, yellow flashing things with many lights.
No pedestrian-activated crosswalk signage is included in this project.
Okay.
What's the reason for
I don't know.
for that? I heard it was because it would stop traffic in the roundabout, which essentially turns it into a four-way street stop.
Correct. I mean, the current wisdom with roundabouts is not to negate its purpose. And so the current practices are not to include anything that's going to stop traffic. Because of the way roundabouts operate and no longer create flights of traffic, such as what a signalized intersection will do, traffic will generally be more spaced out, and with the short crossing distances and lighting and visibility, pedestrians should be able to use these crosswalks safely and not impact traffic that way.
Would it make a difference if the crosswalks were moved back from directly adjacent to the roundabout, rather given more space?
The
I'm
downside.
I'm very concerned that the pedestrians get to have a clear way across, safe, clear, not dodging cars, not any of that?
Certainly, I understand.
Bikes and,
The downside of moving your crosswalks farther away is that people
People will
won't use
jaywalk.
them.
I know.
They'll try to just cut through, and so, you have to balance that somewhat to, provide that safe crossing and make sure people are going to use it.
okay. One of the questions, you want to follow up on something?
I'll ask
Okay.
later.
I know one of the arguments for the roundabout is that it will slow traffic, and I think there's some debate about whether I think most people in the community want to see traffic slowed down and along that way, and if there's a green light, if you see that green light, I think a lot of people go flying through that intersection. And, certainly one thing we can do is move the flashing thing up that way in one of its locations. And I think that's likely to be a good place to move it. But I'm wondering if we do want to slow traffic, does a roundabout work well for that? Is there evidence that it works well for that? Is it just to say it's one thing, to demonstrate is another. So that's, I guess, you're saying that people move 18 to 20 miles per hour inside of roundabouts?
That's a speed they can. Most people will go slightly slower than that.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely, it slows traffic there.
And I'm wondering about accidents. So you talked about the fact that accidents still may occur, but they'll be glancing blows. They won't be head-ons and that sort of thing. Do you have? Is there any of the data available from the roundabout we already have in place? And I know that's a slower road, but is that one? Maybe you have evidence from either there or from other roundabouts that are fast.
I do. I have evidence that Boulder County Sheriff's Department provided for us for Rock Creek Parkway at 88th from 2003 through essentially April of this year. I'll hand it out to you.
Is that before and after? That's what I'm really interested in.
Explain it a little bit.
Thanks.
So the Sheriff's Department, they collect their accident data. It's broken down into different kinds of categories. This is from 2003 through essentially April of this year. The roundabout was constructed during 2006. I think final completion was late in the year 2006. So you see 4 categories there: property damage, hit and runs, injuries, and traffic complaints. Injuries included both unknown injuries and known injuries. Sometimes there are injuries and the police did not get full information on what that might have been, so those are put together in a single category. As you can see, there was a spike in property damage immediately after completion of the roundabout, but then it really dropped back down. And the rest of the data is really inconclusive. Property damage can mean either a fender bender between 2 cars, a car sliding off and hitting a tree, any of those type of incidents.
Thanks.
How far away from the roundabout do you include accidents?
I don't know. I collected this from the Sheriff's Department,
Okay.
and they...
So there's nothing saying whether this is in the roundabout or 20 feet or outside of the roundabout?
Generally, they mean within the approaches, those short median sections just immediately adjacent to and in the circle. Otherwise, they might have an address or a different intersection listed.
And do we know how many feet that approaches include?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
So, I spoke also with the city of Vale, or town of Vale? Town of Vale.
I don't know.
I think it's
I believe
town.
they're the town.
Thank you.
The town.
Okay. And they have those roundabouts that are just off, coming off the highway and then entering town.
Yep.
And I wanted to ask them about some of the features because, I think there are pros and cons to roundabouts, and they said that after they definitely had a reduction in accidents. But one of the big concerns for them was the issue of keeping moving traffic through because they didn't have that much space between where there would be a light and all the traffic that would back up and might back up onto the highway and people trying to go in multiple directions once they hit the light. They said that so that backup space was a key thing for them, and that isn't something that so much affects us unless there's a horde of people, I guess, at the new trailhead or something. But in any case, some of the other things they mentioned was stormwater, which I heard you allude to as well, where it's not all concrete in there. The middle part is something that will allow for stormwater and water runoff and such. But one of the things that they mentioned was that it changed it to a community. It did slow people down, but it changed it to a community feel as well. That instead of being a sort of an impersonal light or whatever that roundabouts bring, make it feel more like it's part of town, part of whatever. I'm not saying I'm that's compelling in any way for me or anything like that, but I do think that was an interesting touch or nuance that I hadn't heard from any other arguments. I will say that your pedestrian and bike issues makes me uncomfortable, but in any case, I'm sure others have questions.
Trustee Williams?
Okay, I do have a number of questions here. First of all, I wanted to start out with what is the width of the road in the roundabout?
Within the roundabout, it's approximately 18 to 20 feet.
Okay. Is that the same size as the 88 and Rock Creek Parkway roundabout?
No, 88th is much larger. It's a 2-lane roundabout.
Right, I understand that, but what is the width of that one?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Could you say it was,
25 to 30 feet.
Okay, all right. The other thing is, if Boulder County is going to foot the bill 100% of the cost, what if it goes up significantly over, is there a cap? Do we have any kind of cap on Boulder County?
Yes, there's not a blank check. The board has approved a design, and Boulder County Transportation Department has approved a design. If there were to be a radical change in that design, then yes, I'm sure that there's a point in which they say no more. We haven't seen that point yet.
So we don't know any figure?
No.
Okay. All right. And let's see here. Have we solicited any feedback from neighboring cities, such as Louisville, about our roundabout on McCaslin?
No.
Okay. Is that something we would want to do? Do we care?
I don't know. Do you?
I might. I would be curious to hear what they had to say, just out of curiosity. Let's see here. Also, is this work going to be conducted, any of it being conducted at night? Can it be conducted at night, or is it just during the day, 8 to 5?
Current plan for this requires contractor to work during hours allowed by the town code, which is 7 to 7, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 on Saturday. No work on Sunday or holidays. So does not include any night work.
Okay. Does that drive up the costs? I assume it does.
If we were to request it, yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. And I am very obviously concerned about the pedestrian issue as well as Trustee Skumatz. And I'm wondering if we've looked at any roundabouts that have some kind of solution that we can look at that works well for pedestrians. Do we have any, information on that?
Well, the current design is the solution for best pedestrians. There have been some communities that have experimented with other things, most recently being Golden, with putting lights for pedestrians at their roundabouts. And the feedback is they're most likely taking them out. They've negated all benefits of putting that roundabout in the first place.
Have any other ways been researched that might work other than this?
I'm sure there have. There's a pretty limited number of what you can do for pedestrians in a situation like this, such as Trustee Skumatz mentioned, moving the pedestrian access away or prohibiting pedestrians. There are several roundabouts that are traffic only and don't allow pedestrians, which is, I don't think, something we want with the trailhead here. Other options are a tunnel or a bridge, but then you doubled or tripled the cost of what you're trying to install here. So,
Is there already a tunnel at this point?
no.
Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to follow on one thing that you mentioned. So you mentioned that Golden said that when they put in the lights, they thought they had negated the impacts of the roundabout. But I don't know where Golden's is. It could be in a very urban area of town. I think there will not be a pedestrian there for 99.9% of the time, and so for 0.1% of the time, we're going to be better off for the pedestrian and no worse than a light was for the cars. So that doesn't seem like a negative argument to me. That seems like I would.
No problem.
If we had gone with a light instead of, then the cars would have to wait anyway. This is only making people wait when there's a pedestrian, and yes, the trailhead may end up being popular, but it's not going to be like a stream of people coming across all the time. So I don't see the lighting issue as negating all the benefits of the roundabout. The vast majority of the time it would be free-flowing. So, anyway.
Okay, and then I also wanted to find out on how bikes navigate. Is there a bike lane? Is this going to be more difficult for bikes to get through? Because this is a pretty high-traffic area for bikes.
Certainly. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the proper way for a bike to navigate a roundabout is to merge with traffic. There will be warning signs that bicycles are merging with traffic. And again, there is that bailout lane onto the sidewalk if a bicyclist is uncomfortable with that. So that is how a bicycle navigates the roundabout.
Okay, so is there any roundabouts that we know of that have bike lanes incorporated in the roundabout?
No, because you end up having a separate set of rules because of the merging in and out of a roundabout by vehicles. By having a separate dedicated lane for bicycles through the roundabout, that bicyclist is trying to navigate continually around, and a vehicle that's in the outer lane, or in this situation, in that lane, is prepared to have the right-of-way to exit at whatever intersection they want. If you add a second lane, that's an additional conflict point. And then the speeds through these, as I said, it's a maximum of 18 to 21 miles an hour. Generally, it's going to be in that 10 to 15 mile range, which a bicyclist is moving. So for them to merge with traffic is reasonable, and they can flow through safely.
Well, actually, a quick follow-up. I used to bike up the Lions and back during the summer. It's actually safer, in my view, to be a bicyclist in a roundabout. Whenever you're going into any intersection as a bicyclist, you have to merge into traffic. If you want to go left and there's two lanes, you've got to merge across traffic anyways. So integrating into the stream of the traffic circle is, in my view, much safer for bicyclists, actually.
Being the nerd that I am, I spend late nights reading about things, and one of them was U.S. DOT's recommendations for roundabouts, and they clearly have said that painting bicycle lanes in a roundabout is actually one of the things that you want to prevent, for sure, for safety reasons.
Okay. Good to know. All right.
That I'm a nerd. Other questions, I'm sorry.
I am through for the moment.
Trustee Rosenfeld.
Yeah, I have just a couple quick questions. So just to be clear, so I understand this correctly, even though the current IGA with Boulder County only it talks about a cost up to $400,000, because our cost is a little bit higher, all we need to do is amend the IGA, and Boulder County will still cover those costs?
Yes.
Okay. And help me with the lighting a little bit more. So because we have to deal with our friends at Excel, those costs are not included here. Do we have any idea what those costs will be, and will those also be covered by Boulder, or do we have to pay for that?
Those costs are not included in our IGA with Boulder. They are in the range, depending on what, the specifics of those lighting styles are, $40,000 to $50,000.
What was that amount?
$40,000 to $50,000.
Okay.
And are we sure Excel's going to stick to that?
In what timeline?
Yeah, so that would be done within the timeline of this construction?
Yes, and typically those are installed at the end of the project anyway.
Okay.
They want to make sure all the infrastructure is in place so that they can then come in and just put
Yeah.
their lights in and be done.
And what, and so you didn't answer who pays?
Right now, that's on our dime. We're trying to negotiate with Boulder County. What they have said is that for this transportation tax, they essentially have $4 million per year. They're not going to approve anybody more on a single project more than 10%. That's how we came up with our $400,000 originally. They do have some flexibility in it. We've had discussions with them. Going to $430,000 is, again, a 10% number, less than 10% increase, and they will most likely just administratively approve us for that. Going beyond that, what they have said is they'll pay for a more expensive intersection, but it would be a phased construction or a phased payment. They'll only pay us this up to this $400,000 as our first year, and sometime down down the road, as their other projects are completed and they have extra money, they can reimburse us for the rest. That's what
Okay.
we've been hearing verbally, and that's what we're trying to get into a written agreement.
Okay, all right. I had a quick question going back to the crosswalks. My sense is because of where the lighting is, it'll essentially be lit across, you'll be able to light across the entire lane in between, covering the distance in between the medians. Is that, how does that compare to what lighting would look like on just the normal intersection, which we don't have right now anyways? I mean, can you light across? Is this going to be, again, just looking at the pedestrian safety issues, is this going to give better lighting, the same, not as good as a four-way intersection?
It will give directed lighting. It's definitely going to light up the intersection. Not 100%, not every square inch of it is lit up, but what it's really focusing on is the approaches to the intersection and where the pedestrians are crossing. This right here is a light standard, and its cone of influence is going to be really in this area, such that a person in this intersection is front lit for a car approaching that person, and also they'll be able to see that there's something going on here, that there is a roundabout there rather than a traffic light or a stop sign. And that kind of setup is designed at all 8 points around this. Here, the light is right in this spot, and so it's illuminating this lower quadrant, which includes this crosswalk and a vehicle coming around this curve or entering from this side. So it's several cones of overlapping light. Your illumination on a intersection is a combination of the wattage you install and the height of the pole. And this is to really reduce energy consumption and light pollution. It's more of a directed, designed lighting scheme than just throwing up 4 double-armed Cobra head lights to make the whole thing light up as bright as day.
Okay. Okay. I think those are all my questions at the moment. Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
If there's a possibility that this does not go through, do we still have the option of a traditional lighting or traditional four-way sign?
Intersection.
A traditional intersection has not been designed. We would have to go back to that 30% design where we were last October and start again.
And what is the timing of the project at this point?
At this point, if approved tonight, they would begin construction within the next 2-3 weeks, possibly before the 4th of July, or at least that time frame shortly thereafter. 60 to 75-day construction period, and be done by the end of September.
Okay. And if we decide on a traditional four-way intersection, then what would be the time frame?
Well, we'd need to do a new design contract, probably in the range of $50,000 for design fees. 8 to 12-week design and advertisement period. The soonest you could even have a construction contract back is close to September 1st to start.
And wasn't there a design already executed at this point? Didn't we have two designs, or were they preliminary?
That was very preliminary. It was really a layout to kind of show you concepts, just get a general idea of costs, of layout, what could be expected, and then a choice was made of which direction you wanted to finalize.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Did you, just a quick question, did you comment on what the feedback was from the planning commission? Did I miss that?
I didn't attend the meeting, but I observed it while it was going on. Chairman, after a lengthy presentation by Mr. Hawkes, and very good discussion by the 9 commissioners, and all 9 were in attendance, it was clear indication that it was 7 in favor of the design and 2 opposed. The 2 that were in opposition, one was, this is just too much for a low-impact intersection. And the second one was, the money would be better spent to hire a cop for the next 5 years and place him there.
Would Boulder County pay for that?
Not the Transportation Department.
Did they have any recommendations or concerns about this particular design?
Matt, did you have any?
Mr. Magley?
John, you were in attendance as well.
Yeah,
Did you
I
have
was
any-
there. The planning commission was generally in favor of the design. They asked a lot of the same questions you had about pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, landscaping and visibility, lighting, and we really went through a lot of the same things that we've discussed tonight.
And what were their biggest concerns? Did they state them?
Yes, they were asking about pedestrian safety. They wanted to make sure that people could still get across this intersection, get to a trailhead if we're creating that drop. And their concerns were answered.
I'm really interested in hearing.
Yeah, I am too. I just want to make sure that we have answered our questions. Okay, so with that, I'll entertain public comment.
George Cuthner, 109 South 4th. Here we got another railroad job. What width did you say the circle was around in there? The turnaround, what is it?
The width of the road through there is 18 to 20 feet.
You got another Douglas Street from here to the railroad track, people. Narrow. This is a railroad job again. Here's your contract, raise your hand, sign it, and we'll start. That's the same thing that happened down there. You're going to have a lot of people disgusted if you approve this tonight with 4 people. We've had this happen too many times. Secondly, I have a question. We got 15 acres of commercial property to the northeast there. Nothing's been said about the effect of this roundabout with this 15 acres of commercial you were all hot to trade a piece of land for so we could get it developed. How does this turnaround affect that? You're taking a major road away from this town that we put in here 25 years ago because you people moved here and you want a roundabout, you think it's going to slow it. That's a major road. How is this going to affect the sales tax by not trucks coming down there and go to your stores? They're going to come through Broomfield? I doubt it very much. There's some thinking to do about this commercial piece of property next to a roundabout. Put one on Road 7 over here, and it's just plain idiot. give people a chance to say if they want this or they don't want this, not just you poor people saying, we're going to do it, and here's the contract. Approve it tonight, and we're starting to have it done by December, in the middle of winter.
Thank you.
Sandy Pennington, 3002 Micah Court. I did not come here today to comment on this. I came simply to attend a meeting. However, I've been at numerous meetings in which this was discussed, including the Planning Commission meeting in question, and I feel extremely strongly that things are being misrepresented here. So I wanted to, for those people who aren't here, who did not expect this level of discussion on this tonight, I want to go back to the beginning. Many of us have been critical of the process that has been followed on major decisions recently in this town, and I go to that again with this. We homeowners, when we bought our houses, were required to sign a disclosure that explicitly stated that McCaslin is a major street, a major thoroughfare, and that there was the potential that it would be widened to 4 lanes to make it even more of a throughway. We all signed that. So that's what we're working on, the perception and the expectation we as homeowners have of that road. By discussing the roundabout, you trustees are changing that expectation. A change in expectation of that proportion requires at least a solid public comment in which people are invited to town hall to discuss this issue with you. I even think there may be a requirement for a public hearing on this, and I would like a comment from our town attorney on whether a change of this nature requires a public hearing.
I can answer the question, but I'll entertain the comment from the town attorney. So the answer is no, but the town attorney.
The answer is no.
Okay. In lieu of a public hearing, then, this is such a change for for that road and what it was expected to do in terms of providing a throughway, that I would expect you, at least in the interest of open and inclusive government, to solicit in a very objective manner public comment on this. Thirdly, when was this approved by the board in an agenda meeting to proceed as a roundabout? Was that officially done in an agenda meeting?
October 22nd, 2008.
Okay.
That was to go out to forbid.
No. That was when the board was presented with the 30% engineering conceptual plans for the 2 design alternatives, the traditional and the roundabout.
I was just asking, to be clear.
And you voted to approve it at that meeting? Because I've attended coffees, I've attended these meetings, and I attended the Planning Commission meeting, and we have always been told that the discussion of this will be at yet a future meeting. And it appears here we are tonight to have that discussion, but not in the context of a discussion on the roundabout, but in the context of the discussion on concrete budget allocations. I just find it to be extremely disturbing. Thirdly, there are major misrepresentations going on here. I was at the Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commissioners, and it can be viewed on film, made the point that they were never asked the question of roundabout versus 4-way intersection. They made the point that they were simply asked to comment on the design plan for the roundabout. At that meeting, they had major design issues that they forwarded onto this board. Those design issues included some of those that were addressed today, pedestrian and cyclist safety. A major one was fire trucks. And at that Planning Commission meeting, they were told, the Planning Commissioners were told, that this is not wide enough for a fire truck to make its way through on the road, that the fire truck and certainly the Safeway delivery vehicles and major trailers, et cetera, by design would have to go up on the embankments of this roundabout to get around it. The issue was never brought up about school buses, but after the meeting, when I went home, I thought, what about school buses? And how can we be designing a roundabout that, by its very design, inhibits speedy emergency vehicle response? Another issue that was brought up is how this will then detour traffic, divert traffic. Those trucks and big vehicles that are slowed and can't make it through this very easily will then be diverted to Indiana, which has several schools on it. And so we go to the issue of safety. The safety issue, there have been really no recorded accidents. I've lived here 6 years and have yet to see an accident at McCaslin and Colton. So I feel like the implication that this is a heavy accident zone is way out of whack. The data simply do not support it. And to go to Mayor Pro Tem Skumat's comment, when she said, I think most people want it slowed, I patently reject that. I don't think any studies, any surveys of any kind have been done to see what most people prefer to have done with this. So I don't believe the Planning Commission has been asked to view the final plan and comment on the final plan to see if their concerns have been remedied. And I think that would be prudent. I would also like to hear from our elected officials, when we put it in the newsletter, what was the public response you heard? On the streets, I'm hearing the comment over and over again, why do we need this? Why is anybody spending $400,000 on it? What are you elected officials hearing, Mayor Pro Tem Skumatz, through the survey? I understand you had 300 responses to your survey. What did people say in that? Does the citizenry want this? With that, I just have to express just extreme displeasure with the process this has gone through.
Okay.
Thank you.
A couple of questions before we move on to additional public comment. So, Mr. Hawkins, so there's been some representation that the fire district believes that this is, their vehicles can't get through the intersection. Have you had a discussion with them?
I have, and there was no representative from the fire department at the Planning Commission. That was a comment from a resident. The fire marshal has seen these plans, and as I said earlier, had made some comments. They are confident their vehicles can navigate this roundabout.
Would a school bus be able to get through the intersection?
Yes.
Would a delivery truck be able to get through the intersection?
Yes.
So I just want to comment just about the McCaslin. So I can't speak to what a real estate agent might have you sign in a disclosure document. I know that McCaslin has been taken out of the Regional Transportation Plan, the RTP, from Dr. Cog for, 6, 7, 8 years now, and has not been designed as a major thoroughfare. It has always been the desire to keep that as a low, I want to say low flow, but I'm thinking plumbing now, but low volume road, and it's always been anticipated from the town to be that, and we've gone out of our way actually to make sure that that hasn't become a thoroughfare. So once again, I can't speak to what your real estate agent made you sign, but I know what the town's plans have been. So, but I'm going to hold for just 1 second, and I'll allow you to have more comment. But George.
George Kuffner of 7520 West Coal Creek Drive. First of all, in my packet, I don't have the proper construction costs for the roundabout, and if I have a double set of the Park 9 construction fees in my packet.
Okay.
So that my packet's not right for starters. I agree with Lisa about the pedestrians, and if a light is going to slow a roundabout down like that, maybe we should stay with a conventional intersection, because he's saying they're going to go through there at 15 to 18 miles an hour. I would bet all the steak dinners you want to lose, they'll go through there at over 40. If you go down in Denver, off of a couple of their main ones in Cherry Creek, those people come through there at 45 and 50 mile an hour and around, but it's like it's not there down around Bellevue. They fly through them. But at any rate, for the pedestrian's sake, if there's a crosswalk and you have to stop and they get a safe passage, that's worth millions of dollars not to lose one kid. This roundabout is not worth one life of one little guy trying to get to this open space or to his park. And I also disagree with John that it's going to cost us another $50,000 for a replan here. I thought that we had an agreement with RNG to do all of our engineering this year not to exceed a couple $100,000. If we're paying him $200,000, he should be the engineering firm that's engineering our road, not some guy that we're going to give another $50,000 or $60,000 to. We've got a great contract with RNG. Let's utilize it. Let's make him design a regular intersection of some sort with great crosswalks for our kids that we don't have to worry about. And I wish that we would consider that. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional public comment from anybody who hasn't had the opportunity. Okay.
Just to clarify, it wasn't a real estate agent who did this. When I signed the official closing documents, that language, along with language about the natural gas pipeline and the parkway or whatever that was coming through, wasn't included in that. So that was the expectation. We closed on our house in October of '93. So that was in those closing documents at that point. The issue I'm bringing up is one of expectation. If that's what we residents expect to happen there, and that is materially being changed, there seems to me to be at least some burden to solicit and listen to public comment. Regarding the public safety vehicles, I'm not sure what has changed since the original design, but I was shocked, and George, you were at that meeting where they said the large vehicles would have to go up on the embankment. Thirdly, on something that is such a major change and potential to make what is currently a safe intersection less safe, I would think we would want to err on the side of prudence and let our own planning commission look at the final plans and put their stamp of approval on this as designed. I would have preferred that the discussion go to them to say four-way versus roundabout and have that discussed at the planning commission process. But if it's too late for that, at least I would think we would want. That board tends to be populated by some fairly serious construction talent. I'd like their opinion on safety of this as now proposed.
Thank you. Additional public comments? Board discussion or questions?
Yeah.
Trustee Williams?
If McCaslin is widened, what happens to the roundabout? Does it need to be reconstructed?
It's not going to be wide.
It's not going to be widened.
Oh, I just want that answer, though.
Okay.
There it is.
If McCaslin's widened, there's two things that could happen. The roundabout could be reconstructed, or you could allow those lanes to merge down back to a single lane, entering this roundabout, and keep what you have. There's a lot of options of what you can do. It just depends on what happens at that future time.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
I just have
Trustee Rosenfeld?
a couple of comments. I remember back to the election of 2004, for those who were here, McCaslin becoming a larger, double lane in each direction road was a huge issue, and it turned out a lot of voters against any expansion of McCaslin. So I've always looked at this as that was kind of a clear signal that the town did not want McCaslin expanded. We wanted to make sure it was kind of a safe street, and we didn't want to create a lot of traffic. Designing the town center, through other discussions, the issue of how, taming McCaslin has always been discussed, and nobody has ever turned out against it. Everyone has said, yes, that's what we want. So, on this one, I guess I'm a little surprised if expectations are it's going to be a 4-lane road and we're actually trying to slow traffic down so it's safer. I see that as actually a good thing. So I'm a little confused. If people expected it was only going to be a 2-lane road and then we tried to widen it, I see that as an issue. But I see we're trying to lower the expectation of of how much traffic is going to be and how fast people are going to be going. So I actually see it as a good thing. You comment on Planning Commission. So we've had this discussion a couple of times on what's the role of Planning Commission in approving projects outside of our land use code. I think in the past we've talked about the Planning Commission is really set up to talk about land use when it comes to development of property. And so we've actually included the Planning Commission in this, whereas normally in the past we didn't have to. So we asked for their input, but just a point of clarification, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no requirement that the Planning Commission approve all of our road construction projects. And so we actually went a little further this time and to get their input, which I think was valuable. Finally, my experience is limited, but I was on the Planning Commission for a year and a half before joining the board, so I've been around for a few years now. Designing intersections for large vehicles is very different than designing intersections for regular cars. And you end up having to go much further in terms of how wide the lanes have to be, how much turning radius you need, all those kinds of things. They add cost. It's my understanding that for very large vehicles, having to roll up on the curb, which is not a kind of 6-inch vertical curb that's meant for them to roll over, is not uncommon, and these truck drivers are used to it. So from that standpoint, it didn't shock me, and maybe it's just because I have a little more experience in looking at some of these things. But I think that's kind of common. I certainly see trucks doing it all the time on 6-inch vertical curbs, and they don't seem to have too much of an issue with it. So I think maybe from a resident perspective, there's a lesson here about, being more involved, us communicating better. But in terms of the comments, I guess I'm a little, some of them I just don't quite understand in terms of all the things we've looked at. So.
Okay. Other comments? Trustee Skumats?
So maybe just following on that last comment, could you reply one more time about where citizen comment has been solicited and all that?
As a result of the board's last review of this plan back in March, the board asked specifically that information about this proposed improvement be included in the April newsletter, which it was, and that it be referred to the Planning Commission for not a public hearing because of the publication requirements and the time delays, but to the Planning Commission for a thorough review of the plan and a recommendation. That was done the first week in April.
With public input in that?
Yes. It was a fairly lengthy meeting.
Public
Yeah.
input parts. Any other?
No. And certainly not before the board opined on its preferred design alternative in October.
And in October, did that come up as a public comment issue, or how did it come up?
It was a scheduled workshop session item where the board was reviewed preliminary cost estimates and preliminary design schematics, as John described, at the 30% engineering level. Went back and looked at the notes. All 7 members of the board were in attendance, and the board was clear, unanimous, that based on the cost differential between the two, and the cost estimate at that time was roughly $340 for a conventional versus $370, now escalated to $414, $426 with the addendums that have been recommended. But based on that cost differential, that the board's preferred design alternative was the roundabout.
So again, for education purposes, the, something has to be done with that intersection at the cost of at least $340,000 maybe, and presumably same percentage escalation or whatever. And what or why is that? What is changing about that intersection that's requiring something to be? Why? What brought this forward? Why does something have to happen at the intersection?
Well, currently, it's...
Try to lead you somewhere down.
Currently, it is a legged intersection with the introduction, with an uncontrolled fourth leg, which is the trailhead. With the improvement of the, significant improvement at the trailhead, it now becomes a full-functioning four-legged intersection. So that's what was driving doing something at that location. Is it adding and we've also recognized that there were numerous issues. It's a very poorly lit intersection currently. The only signage, as an example, is a very small, way off the setback, attached to an existing utility pole that is not visible even in the best of daylight. All sorts of inherent issues and concerns with the current configuration of that intersection. So this has been on our capital program for a while. When we were successful in getting the county's commitment for financial participation, 50% for design, 100% of construction, up to a cap, the board elected to proceed with it, and recognizing that it does tie immediately thereafter with the trailhead.
And I feel compelled to respond to one of the issues that was raised, which is I have solicited feedback both through surveys and through lots of other, informal conversations at Safeway and people coming up to me and emails sent to me and everyone else and so on. And opinion is pretty all over the map. The survey got on this issue got about 100 responses, and the majority of the 100 responses and the people who responded to the survey largely were people who were responding and exercised, I guess, about the land swap as sort of what drew them into the survey. So that's sort of the group that is more represented perhaps than average group. But the comments ranged everywhere from I strongly oppose this to I really like the idea of traffic calming to anything that slows things down is a good thing to pedestrians. And the real takeaway for me, and that's always been an issue for me, and when we approved it, I know we discussed the issue of pedestrian access, safety, et cetera, being a primary consideration. That's the sort of feedback that I've been taking away from citizens. I think many of the citizens may have felt that the options were roundabout, or may have felt that that nothing needs to happen. And I think that what I'm trying to ask you is, does something need to happen? If something needs to happen, then and I think one of the other issues was, gosh, we're going to spend $400,000 on this, and don't we have other things we could do with $400K? Not that we have to spend it because it's not our $400K, but it's $400K is being offered to fix this intersection problem. The expansion of the intersection that we need to do something on, and the question I think then comes down to is it a roundabout or not a roundabout? None of which affects our town budget. Something needs to happen because we've got a trailhead now that we didn't have before. I'm very concerned about. I also heard part of the public hearing or the meeting with the Planning Commission, but I know I don't stay. That's not something I'm meant to rule on what I hear, basically. But I took away from it pedestrians. Pedestrians was a key thing, and I know that coming in that was one of my major issues. There was a number of the citizens I've talked to and others have been concerned that outsiders will go too fast and that people aren't very knowledgeable about roundabouts, and that especially if they're flying down from 128, right? 128, I have a real problem with highway numbers. I don't know what my problem. Anyway, the one that goes up there, yes. Landmark scale, not a direction scale. Anyway, that people flying down there can get sort of abruptly, stopped or whatever. Well, I think that there are things to deal with that, including traffic, signs and people learn these things over time. I think I'm very interested in seeing this be a safe way for citizens to get across the street and to the trail and in every direction. And I'm very concerned about the pedestrians. There's no place to cross, for a very long ways in either direction from here. And I would really like to see a solution that, one, slows down traffic, because I personally don't feel it's our job to make citizens, to get citizens through our town fast, but rather safely. And that's a primary concern for me. The other primary concern for me is pedestrians. So anyway, to answer your question, that's the kind of feedback I got. It was all over the map. And I think that one of the questions is, does a roundabout slow people down? I can't see how that kind of a turn won't slow people down. You're not talking about the kind where it's easy to just sort of fake right a little bit and fake left a little bit. That's not that kind of turn. That turn is doing far more than that. That center is coming out much wider. I'm thinking about some of the roundabouts that come in even when I'm just going into little, golf course neighborhoods or whatever, and I have to do more turn. This is more on the high end of a turn than the low ones I've seen. So I don't think anyone's flying through that, I don't think anyone's flying through it. Anyway, so that's the feedback that I heard.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry for the rambling.
No? Trustee Williams, anything?
I'm just thinking, kind of writing down here a couple things that I feel aren't finalized that make me apprehensive. The signage in the roundabout, how that is going to work, and the lighting costs that we don't have. And it can't hurt to have more public input. Another reading on this, however you want to put it, I wouldn't think would put us that far behind. That's my thoughts. And then final costs without having to have an addendum brought back forth. I'd rather see this be solidified once and not have to come back and make changes. So that's another concern of mine.
For the lighting?
No, for the entire intersection. Even if the costs would go up and we need to go back to Boulder County and say, okay, now the costs are at this amount, we just need to make sure you're going to pay it.
So this is a fixed fee contract, right? We bid it out, they bid us a cost, that's what it's going to cost.
But I heard somebody say that in fact, I think it was town manager say something about that we need to go back and put in the contract with Boulder County that they will pay 100% of the cost.
As I indicated during the discussion session, your next agenda, we anticipate having an amended intergovernmental agreement between the town and Boulder County to cover the new capital improvement costs. It's been clear that they've been willing to pick up the overage between 400 and where we're at tonight, 426. We're still pushing to get the additional $40,000 to $50,000 added to that for the lighting. If we're successful with it, great. If not, that'll be on the town's dime, the town's responsibility to pay for those improvements. And as Mr. Hawkes indicated, the county has expressed a willingness to consider even those larger costs, but they may not be in a position to write that check in 2009. So the revised intergovernmental agreement may well turn around and say, here's $440,000. If the project cost is $480,000, you're going to get your $40,000 in 2010 or 2011. But we don't have that solidified tonight. We do have their verbal that they're prepared to cover the cost of this construction contract. But even today, you've got an agreement that says $400,000.
Okay, so I will just reiterate that I would rather see a more finalized plan on this.
As we all would. But we don't want to run into the issue that we're building these kinds of projects in the cold weather months. So you've given us a calendar that you wanted to achieve as well, and we're trying to accomplish that.
Trustee Rosenfeld?
Yes, maybe. So just to be clear, the amendment is just for the new cost, not for anything else.
Nothing else.
Okay. What would be the impact if we just asked that this come back in 2 weeks, along with the amendment for Boulder County. Would that impact, assuming the board were to approve this, would that impact the ability to start, or?
We probably don't mobilize by July 1. We might mobilize then by July 15th. We don't complete by September 30th. We might complete by October 15th.
Does that impact the proposal in terms of how long the proposal is?
The prices?
Is good for?
No.
90 days or something.
Okay. Would you be able to have the cost for Excel within 2 weeks as well? Understanding that Excel
Works at their own pace.
works at their,
I'm not ready to say yes to that question. I'll certainly ask them and try to nail that down,
okay.
but no guarantees on that.
And I'm just going to throw in one more thing. I would feel a lot more comfortable if we had a full board voting on this as well. Just, that's my opinion on something very important like this. I'm sure the other members would like to put their 2 cents in, but that's my thoughts on that.
My comments about this is, so I'm strongly in favor of this. This is no shock to anybody. I was strongly in favor of the roundabout at the marketplace. I think that's worked very well when we designed that intersection. I fundamentally disagree, speaking in my personal, professional life, that this is causing any safety issue, and if I was concerned, then I clearly would vote against it. So, if a four-way intersection was an improved safety item, clearly I would be in favor of that. I have kids, know a whole bunch of kids, know a lot of kids that are crossing at nearby that intersection. So I fundamentally disagree that this is a less safe approach. I know that I see children going over to El Dorado K-8 crossing Colton Road. They push the button, and I see cars driving right through the intersection while they're trying to cross. So once again, I think that 88th Street works well. I think this is a safe intersection. I think probably more safe than a four-way stop. I think that the aesthetics of this are very important. And once again, the board since Mayor Spence was here, which is going back a ways, has gone out of our way to make sure that McCaslin has not become a thoroughfare. That's why we took it out of the Dr. Cog process. That's why we didn't ask for more money. That's why we talk about town center designs. We want to calm traffic in here. This is another opportunity to do that. This is why we've asked the Northwest Parkway or whatever it is to push your intersection as far east as possible, because we don't want the traffic through here. We don't want the four-way intersection. So, if it's important for the board to have this come back at the next meeting, that's fine. Half of a month pushed out one way or the other isn't going to make any difference in terms of construction. So, I'm happy to do that. But once again, I think that this is clearly the best choice for this intersection for many different reasons: environmental, aesthetic, safety. So I'm in favor now. I'll be in favor in 2 weeks from now if that's important. So that's where I'm at. Trustee Skumatz.
And I think it's important for citizens to hear that we've been really clear about this isn't going to be a major thoroughfare. I think I remember vividly the picture of McCaslin with noise walls on the side, and that was a very, very effective piece that I think got people to recognize, that's what could be talking about, and no, people very clearly said, no, that's not the direction we want to go. I think this kind of a roundabout, I'm very interested in public safety. I think kids being able to walk across it with bikes, and it would make me feel a lot more comfortable if there was a way for that option to be available to people, that they have the right to turn on a light that gets them across in a very safe way without any ambiguity whatsoever. I think that's something that can be troublesome. I don't think the four-way intersection is going to be better at that. I think that we just need to make this even better. I think it will slow traffic. I think it leads us to town center starts to be sort of the first intro to sort of the community town center direction. And I came in here hoping that we would get to deferring to a meeting where we had more board members. So I'd be happy to defer it to the next board meeting.
Okay. Trustee Rosenfeld.
I tend to agree with everything the mayor has said. Trustee or Mayor Pro Tem Skumatz So I'm in favor of this, I think, for all the reasons stated. I don't have a preference. If people want to wait, that's fine.
Okay, I hear a general head nod to, we can vote on this if the board desires, but we can, I think, have a general head nod that this can come back at the next meeting if that makes everybody more comfortable with the process.
Whatever slows traffic.
Okay?
I've been left out of a couple important votes in my life, and I prefer, for big votes, if people want to be there, that's fine.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm not aware of anybody missing the next meeting, but we were caught by surprise that we were missing 3 tonight.
Oh, I see. That's a surprise.
Okay.
We had advance knowledge of 2. We learned of the other one late Friday or Thursday.
So do we need to make a motion to defer this, or?
I suppose it'd be
Motion to table.
better policy to do that. So I'll entertain a motion by Trustee Skumatz.
I'd like to move that we take up item 8 in the next meeting's agenda.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Williams. Further discussion. Once again, I'll be in favor of it, but all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Let's see. So we're coming near the end of our regular meeting. I just wanted to make one quick comment. So, one of our fellow trustees has recently lost his father-in-law, Mike of Mike's Camera, and I think we all feel very bad about it. I knew Mike personally for a really long period of time. He was a great guy, and it was terrible to see that happen. He was a great member of our community when he lived here, and obviously a great member of the Boulder area in general. So felt bad for our trustee and his wife and all members involved. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to move into executive session to continue the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real, personal, or other property pursuant to CRS 24-6-402.4.A on various real estate transaction. Motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Williams. Discussion?
I have one last
Yes.
discussion. So when this comes up this last item 8
8,
comes up
okay.
at the next meeting, there will be a chance for citizen input, right?
Yep.
Okay, so just so citizens
We
are
won't put it
aware.
on, we will not put it on the consent agenda.
Yes. Just so citizens are aware, they will have another chance.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Further discussion about the executive session. All in favor? It's unanimous. We're in executive session. Thank you.